Now, a few days before the protests began, 5 states got a court injunction to restrain protesters to a particular location to protest. In Lagos, the protest was restricted to Freedom and Peace Park, while here in Abuja, residents were told to protest only at the National Stadium.
Let's bring in a lawyer, Victor Opatola, who is the convener of Lawyers for Civil Liberty. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. Well, I mean, we're looking at the legality or otherwise of restricting protesters to designated areas and saying, thus far, you can go. Let's get your thoughts on that and how that was carried out in the course of the protests.
Okay, in regards to this is particularly in regards to the injunction gotten by the various states. There has been various arguments in regards to, when you look at the injunction, the first 4 people who are the defendants in that particular process, they were individuals, Showore, Denola, and some other 3 persons. Then, curiously, when you look at the 5th defendant, you see an unknown person, it was tagged as unknown person. So in the reasoning of the people that filed that particular court process, their reasoning is that tagging them unknown person will be enough to box the protesters together, as unknown person. But there have been various arguments in regards to that. First of all, court injunctions, court judgments are binding, totally binding until they are overturned, by courts or a superior court. But in this particular instance, there's been argument to the effect that this particular injunction is not applicable to protesters. And the legal argument is simply that for you to sue anybody as a defendant in this country, our legal jurisprudence dictates that it's either they are natural persons in law or they are juristic entity. Natural persons in law are individuals, human beings with flesh and blood. Those are natural persons. While juristic entities are registered companies, companies limited by guarantee, incorporated trustees, those are juristic entities. Curiously, when you look at who an unknown person is, you get to realize that there can be no legal, natural person. The unknown persons, they are not natural persons, and it's not a legal entity. So the argument is, when you look at majority, almost all the High Court rules, if not all the High Court rules, there's a specific, the use of the word unknown person, when you want to sue somebody as a defendant, you use as unknown person, is used as special procedures, special instances under the law. And that special instance is particularly defined. When you look at FCT High Court rules, that's Order 13, Rule 9 and 10, it specifically mentions the instance where you can sue a defendant as an unknown person. And when you look at it, you understand that it relates solely to land matter or property matter. That is where you can use unknown person. Right. So in this instance, where various states and FCT ministers purported sued protesters under the designation of unknown person, it is not applicable to this protester. First of all, they are under the law. Unknown person is not a juristic person, neither is it a natural person. So this particular injunction will be applicable to protesters. If they are protesters in Nigeria who goes by the name who their father and their mother named them unknown person. If not, they are not, that's not a juristic entity in law or a natural person. And there have been plethora of Supreme Court judgment on this. We have NPA versus Faremi, we have Agbomagbe Bank versus GBU Levant. Those are classical local standards of, that makes us understand the concept of juristic entity and natural person in law.
Right. Very interesting, very insightful. I'm curious too, with the pushback that the protesters got from the police, where tear gas and all kinds of things, were used to quell the protests. Unfortunately, you have a number of, over 20 deaths recorded so far. How does the law, interpret this situation? And does it in any way protect in terms of actionability in the law courts?
Okay, if by what
because the impression is that the attacks or the response from the security agencies were unprovoked. How do you now, based on what we saw with the NSAS, how does it translate here?
Okay,
or what's likely to happen?
No, basically, the burden is on the police to show that the protesters, provoked them. And when you look at the guideline, use of force guideline, that's 2019, police use of force guideline, that's guideline 237. It dictates the particular way and manner in which the police can use armed guns, to be firearms, to be specific. And one of the ways, one of those things it dictates, when you look at that particular guideline, it states that where the life of the policeman is in immediate danger and there is no other way he can escape it. That's the first one. The second one, where the life of another person is in immediate danger and there is nothing else the police officer on duty can actually do to avert that. So those are some of the examples where even the police guideline 2019 allows them to use firearm. When you look at the trajectory of the protests so far, we have seen instances where the government has sponsored thugs, to infiltrate this protest. Well, let's take Abuja protests as an example. Yesterday, you understand that the protesters, they moved from National Stadium down to...
Where they were restricted
they moved from National Stadium down to Eagle Square here. Their movement from National Stadium to Eagle Square was peaceful. If a group of people can move themselves from National Stadium to Eagle Square peacefully, why is it that it's at Eagle Square that violence was registered? That is to show you that it was not the protesters that engendered the violence. It was the resistance from the police. And that very day, yesterday when you go through, this area, 3am zone area of Abuja, canisters of tear gas, you see littering everywhere. So going back to your question, the burden is on the police to show that these protesters actually provoked them to the extreme that warrant the use of armed weapon.
Sulai?
Well, Victor, we'd like to thank you for your time. Opatola, thank you for your time.